We gather today to honor a simple truth. Every human life is a spiritual journey. None of us arrives in this world with all of the answers. We grow through joy and sorrow, through wonder and doubt, through moments of certainty and moments of mystery, through relationships, experiences, and the questions that call us deeper. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we do not ask one another to follow a single path. Instead, we walk together, sharing wisdom, seeking truth, and supporting one another in the ongoing work of become more fully who we are called to be. Our task is not to tell others what they must believe. Our task is to create a community where exploration is welcome, where questions are cherished, where differing perspectives are met with respect, and where every person can bring their whole self without fear. Whether you are young or old, living with visible or invisible disabilities, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, questioning, straight, or still discovering who you are, know that you are welcome here. When I came among you nearly 2 years ago seeking comfort in a time of need, I found more than a congregation. I found a spiritual community. A community where questions are welcomed, a community where compassion is practiced, a community where people are encouraged to grow, to seek, and to belong. Here we journey together, and here we remind one another of a simple but powerful truth. You are welcomed, you belong, and you matter. May we open our hearts, quiet our minds, and begin our time of worship together. Our chalice lighting comes to us and it is entitled Open to Possibility by Irene Glass. We kindle light and with it possibility, that we are more than the sum of our parts, that the world is more than a problem to solve, that illumination is more than simple flame. We light the chalice and open to possibility. Our reading today comes from former UUA President Peter Morales, entitled Experience Connection. What does deep spirituality feel like to you? Spirituality is impossible to define and difficult to describe. For me, it feels like connection. Connection to myself, to others around me, to the earth, and all of creation. Connection to myself feels like deep peace, awareness, calm, authenticity. Connection to others feels like compassion, community, acceptance, and enduring love. Spirituality is not an idea, it is an experience. When I experience connection, dividing lines disappear. Inner conflict gives way to integrity. The line that separates my individuality from others fades. We become one. I find connections with my deepest self in times of solitary practice and reflection. I find connection with others in community, often in worship. All the great spiritual traditions teach this. Today, the connection with creation, with the earth and the cosmos, may be the most difficult. We live in an artificial, controlled environments that separate us from the natural world. More than humans in any other time, we have lived separated from the natural world, the world from which we emerge and that sustains our lives. We so very much need to experience our world. We need to let go of controlling our world and allow ourselves to become one with it. We find ourselves when we lose ourselves. May we connect, really connect. When we do, it changes everything.
As some of you know, I spent many years working at half-price books. I loved my job, and I was thrilled when they put me in charge of the religion section. At the time, there was a big interest in spirituality, and we had all kinds of people coming in looking for books on the subject. The problem was we didn't have any shelves for this. Why? Because no one, myself included, was sure what books to put in there. How is spirituality different from all the other books in the religion section? Did you want to lump Muslim spirituality in with feminist or conservative Christian spirituality? And what about the books that seem spiritual, but we put in the metaphysics section because they weren't affiliated with any established religious tradition? We ended up with one small shelf of rather generic books with the word spirituality in the title, which is long gone now, I'm sure. This illustrates the basic problem in talking about spirituality. How do you define this exactly? Even Wikipedia admits that there is no single widely agreed upon definition of spirituality, citing a survey of 27 explicit definitions, among which there is little agreement. I came across a long academic article specifically dealing with how hard it is to define spirituality. It ended up with a vague and overly inclusive definition of a system of meaning, which doesn't differentiate it from any other systems of meaning, like political ideologies, psychological frameworks, or philosophies. Trappist monk and interfaith advocate Wayne Teasdale states that spirituality, in its inner spiritual manifestation, is a vision of the spiritual life nourished by other schools of spirituality. I'm not sure what that means. Most definitions include a vertical dimension, meaning a relationship with a higher power, usually a deity. Alistair Hardy, who wrote The Spiritual Nature of Man, defines spirituality as a fundamental human drive centered on a deep awareness of a benevolent, non-physical power that appears partly or wholly beyond and greater than the individual self. Houston Smith, author of The World's Religions, defines it as the inner dimension of the human search for ultimate meaning, value, and transcendence, adding that spirituality requires the grounding, ethical discipline, and community of an established religious tradition. William James, who wrote The Varieties of Religious Experience, defines spirituality as the feelings, acts, and experiences of individual men in their solitude, so far as they apprehend themselves to stand in relation to whatever they may consider divine. This is an issue in UU because not everyone believes in the divine. Our religion includes many people who don't believe there is a vertical dimension of any kind. No God, no angels, no aliens, avatars, or ancestor spirits, just us here on planet Earth. As a result, we throw a lot of energy into making the world a better place, which is a wonderful thing. We are a religion of seekers, thinkers, and activists. But are we missing out on something? Paul R. Smith states in Integral Christianity that the Unitarian Universalist Church is solidly in the modern age, something that many would probably agree with, and proudly so. He goes on to say that we are genuinely on the spiritual path, but once you remove the vertical dimension, only the horizontal is left. I agree that some UUs are still solidly in the modern age, but many have moved on to the postmodern, and so on to more, spiritual possibilities. However, Smith says this isn't much better. He states that this kind of religion can be 300 miles wide and 3 inches deep. But is this necessarily the case with UU? How would we deepen our religious experience or spiritual experience when we are open to so many different ideas? Can you have both depth and breadth in a religion? What does depth look like in UU? These kind of questions keep my head spinning. But we still haven't defined spirituality. Maybe we should go at it from another direction. To make sure we're not confusing it with something else, we should look at what spirituality is not. Spirituality isn't religion, which is a system of beliefs, values, practices, and scriptures that connect a community of people to one another. The great religions of the world provide basic frameworks in which to order one's life. A Hindu from India or a Buddhist from Japan might experience culture shock here in Texas, but they would still, hopefully, recognize their religion here. Spirituality isn't theology, which is the intellectual working out of doctrines deemed important by the religion. This can be an interesting venture with regard to your own tradition, but may seem kind of like the angels dancing on the head of a pin issue if you're not. If you don't share the same belief system, working out these sorts of details isn't going to endear it to you further. UUs have an adult educational program called Building Your Own Theology, which tells you where we stand in regard to such things. Spirituality isn't ritual. All churches have some kind of degree of ritual. These work to engage our physical selves in the tradition and open us up to other aspects of it. Like theology, rituals that are deeply meaning to one religion may seem completely senseless to someone else. After a while, they may even seem that way to the people practicing them, thus the phrase empty rituals. Spirituality is not praxis. This is a process by which our beliefs are put into action. It is an important part of any world-affirming religion, certainly ours. Most of you have probably heard the verse from the book of James saying that faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead. But both elements enter into religious practice. Works without faith may be wonderful, but by themselves, they don't constitute spirituality. What about faith? Faith here refers to trust, as in faith that life has meaning, everything happens for a religion, or God is good. At times we have faith in things despite appearances to the contrary. This points to the element of doubt, which is part of faith. If we knew for sure, that would be knowledge, which is something different. But life can be scary sometimes, and we don't have all the answers, so faith is important. It helps us to hold on, to be positive in trying circumstances. Faith comes closer than these other things, but in and of itself, it isn't spirituality either, which I still haven't defined, I know. Another approach would be to look at what spirituality does. A good spirituality provides the foundation, impetus, and energy for our religions, theology, rituals, and so forth by addressing several important aspects of human existence. First, a good spirituality involves issue of meaning and purpose, the so-called big questions. Some people think it's dumb to speculate on such things because we can't possibly know the answers to questions as why are we here or what should we be doing? The problem is we do answer these questions and we act out of them, but unconsciously. For example, if it seems obvious to us that this is a dog-eat-dog world and it's everyone for themselves, we will project that outward. If we think the purpose of life is to force everyone into our own particular religion, then we're going to put a lot of energy into that. We may not even be aware that this is a belief of ours, one susceptible to examination and change. It may seem like one of those everyone knows this kind of things that psychologists refer to as embedded assumptions. If your beliefs are common in the culture, they may even seem like truth, no matter how little sense they make or how much harm they cause. So these are not trivial pie-in-the-sky questions. They have real-world consequences. A good spirituality provides moral guidance. This comes from scriptures, traditions, and current religious leaders. How do we conduct ourselves in this world? The answers vary between religions, sects, and denominations according to the needs of the specific place and time. The 10 Commandments, the Eightfold Path, the Analects of Confucius, and others help guide our behavior in ways that would be conducive to a good society. Myth-based religions have stories about people who've done the right thing in trying situations, giving us examples to emulate. Moral guidance also has an inner component. Most religions stress some sort of spiritual growth. Congregations engage in prayer sessions, discussion groups, workshops, and worship retreats in an effort to become better people according to the tenets of their particular faith. For some religions, such as Zen Buddhism, this inner aspect is the main focus. In Zen, you learn to be still and observe the contents of your own mind in a non-judgmental way. With practice, you begin to see how you are affected by certain stimuli, and in so doing, are able to separate your responses from the things that seem to provoke them. Instead of reacting in a knee-jerk way, you're able to allow a little space for something new to come in. In time, you are able to better see things as they truly are, apart from your personal issues. The more you understand about your own interpretations, motivations, and assumptions, the less damage you are likely to inflict onto the world. And the world is a hard place sometimes. A good spirituality must address the pain and unfairness of life. Why are things the way they are? Why must we suffer so? The book of Genesis says that Eve doomed the whole race by eating an apple from the tree of knowledge. The Rig Veda provides justification for the Hindu caste system. Subsequent doctrines relating to sin and karma help people to place their own suffering into a context. Stories about people who have suffered provide inspiration about how to deal with our own adversity. A good spirituality will offer comfort, hope, strength, and courage in the midst of life's setbacks. It will give us reasons not to give in to despair, ways to learn from the experience and apply our hard-won wisdom to help others. It will remind us that our existence on earth is important and we are needed here. Our community of faith surrounding us with love and care helps to reinforce this message. We also find solace in prayers, rituals, songs, and stories from our particular tradition. All these help us to hang on in trying times. And a good spirituality addresses the wonder of existence. The world can be a difficult place, but it's also beautiful. We all have moments of deep happiness sometimes where we feel blessed and at peace. Other times we are filled with a curiosity that borders on the holy. Or we may experience something so out of the ordinary that we feel as though we have contacted some other mode of existence entirely. Spirituality will help us to frame these experiences in a way to make them understandable. Overall, a good spirituality has to do with the way we engage with ourselves, each other, the world, and beyond. It reminds us that we don't have to be victims of this sometimes troublesome planet. In the midst of our pain, life has meaning. Reassures us that we are all works in progress. We don't have to be perfect, but we can be better, do better, and make us a better world. This is part of what makes life meaningful. in general, are doing pretty well on the spiritual path, at least according to the tenets of transpersonal psychology. This is a branch of psychology that allows for a spiritual dimension. Progress here has to do with an ever-increasing inclusivity in terms of who you regard as important, what you believe, and how you love. The more limited you are in these aspects, like denying rights to other people, seeing those who are not like you as being inferior or evil, or thinking your beliefs are the only legitimate ones, the longer your spiritual journey is apt to be. UU is about as an inclusive religion as you can get. We're open to all kinds of people, experiences, and ideas. We derive inspiration from many sources, appreciating human individuality and agency. We realize that what works for one person may not work for someone else, and we are unique in this respect. To capitalize on our strengths, I would like to propose a model of openness, which would connect the elements of a healthy spirituality to our tradition. How would this look, and what kind of challenges might we face? First, a spirituality of open hands. This is the horizontal axis mentioned earlier and has to do with practice of various kinds. Most churches do this through their missions, ministries, and community outreach. In UU, we speak of being generous with our times, talents, and treasure. We are sympathetic to the human condition and realize that the world doesn't have a level playing field. We want life to be fair for everyone, so we engage in social justice work to help those who are being treated unfairly. We try to be good stewards of the earth by taking care of animals and engaging in ecologically friendly practices. We understand that we are all in this together. Praxis is an important part of our religion, and we're pretty good at this. Our challenge here is to keep widening our connections in the world. Second, a spirituality of open hearts. This is the inner aspect of open hands. Krishnamurti says that only when we realize that you and I are responsible for all of the misery in the entire world will we act. But coming to this realization requires a great deal of self-awareness. As we examine the depths of our own hearts, we don't always come out looking so good. We've been projecting our fear and anger on other people, and sometimes feeling pretty self-righteous in the process. But self-awareness fosters compassion, as well as those good humanistic values like humility, honesty, and empathy. We see that we're all groping in the dark, and knowing firsthand how hard it is to see things as they truly are, begin to have compassion for everyone on earth. This blindness is part of the human condition, and we're all human, even those people we don't like. Our task here is to look more deeply into our own hearts. Third, open minds. UUs excel at this more than any other religion. A spirituality of open minds includes an emphasis on curiosity, critical thinking, and openness to new ideas. We understand the importance of gray areas, paradox, and complexity. We emphasize the search for truth instead of claiming to know the answers. In this search, we are open to all religions, philosophies, and traditions, respecting each other's rights to their own opinions and ideas. We don't have to agree with each other. In fact, we often learn a lot from our disagreements. Our growing edge here is to ask bigger questions. I could leave it at that, but I have one more, which for lack of a better term, I will call open spirit. This connects with all of the above, hands, hearts, and minds, as well as the big questions, moral guidance, pain, and wonder. We, as human beings, have learned so much and accomplished so many things that people couldn't have imagined 150 years ago. My great-grandmother came to Texas in a covered wagon and lived to see a man walk on the moon. This explosion of knowledge and technology is mind-blowing. But our world is, in many respects, a mess. We have microplastics in our brains. Climate change is wreaking havoc on the environment, and we continue to kill each other at a staggering rate. Why? These are complex issues, to be sure. Unfortunately, in our efforts to fix things, we often make them so much worse. Einstein said that we cannot solve problems at the same level of thinking that created them. And that next level involves self-awareness. In our spiritual practice, we come to realize just how little we understand about the workings of our own minds, much less everything else, and there's so much to know. We do know that we are part of a vast, larger whole. This isn't the vertical dimension where there's God in heaven and us here below, but an all-encompassing reality. While science continually makes inroads in its many disciplines, this bigger picture and its questions of meaning remain a mystery. And we as humans don't have the final word on what is possible or even real. We are drastically limited by our physicality, our perceptual abilities, and our intellectual capacity. Our own assumptions, paradigms, and beliefs further limit us, cutting us off from potentialities of which we are currently unaware. What if we were to address this mystery head-on, without insisting on our limited paradigms, but merely acknowledging them? Not abandoning our critical thinking skills, but opening them up to possibilities we might not yet have considered. Allowing for a space between our assumptions and the real, whatever that is. For all we know, some of what we at this point consider to be supernatural and therefore not real might actually be very real and perfectly natural, the paranormal perfectly normal. This, I think, might be our biggest challenges you use to open up to this mystery. Overall, UU has many strengths. We excel at the outward or horizontal aspects of spirituality, the giving of our times, talents, and treasure, social activism, the sharing of ideas, open hands and minds. Our growing edge may be that inner aspect, what some might call vertical, but I've referred to as the all-encompassing reality. Some call this reality God, the universe, or all that is. This is where everything comes together in ways we don't yet understand, where the purpose of life is known and things make sense. Some believe this is where good prevails in the midst of all the suffering in creation, where we can search our souls in relation to this good and strive to be more in harmony with it, where we can find solace, strength, and never-ending wonder. The spiritual, which I guess I'd better get around to defining. I'm going to go back to what Peter Morales said about connection in our opening words. Connection to myself, to others around me, to the earth and the cosmos. He admits that connection with creation, with the earth and the cosmos may be the most difficult in these times. I think spirituality is that connection between our questions, our answers, our beliefs and our actions, our fears and our hopes. It even connects the things I said spirituality wasn't: religion, theology, practice, faith, and ritual. Spirituality is what's underneath all those things, what started them off to begin with, and what holds them together now. Born of the very human experiences such as wonder, curiosity, fear, and the desire to devote oneself to something. In a way, spirituality is very similar to love. Love isn't in and of itself washing the dishes or taking out the trash. It isn't staying up late at night to make sure that everyone gets home safely or waking up early to make sure they get out the door ready to take on the day. It isn't working long hours at a job you hate or juggling dozens of things in your mind to make sure everyone gets what they need. Love is the force underneath all that. It's why we do all those things for one another. It's what connects what's inside of us with what's outside. Likewise, spirituality runs through everything we are and what we do. We only limit this by our beliefs in what is and what isn't possible, something we, at this point of our evolution, don't really know. So we keep on asking questions. We UUs are good at that. Thank you.
Our closing words today come from the wisdom of Lao Tzu, traditionally regarded as the founder of Taoism and author of the Tao Te Ching. The true meaning of life can never be put into words. The words that you use to explain life are words and nothing more. At the beginning of heaven and earth, there were no words. Words came only after mankind appeared. Whether you see the secret of life calmly and coolly, or you see the surface of life with passion, the secret and the surface are only different forms of the same thing. Different parts of life may be given names. Different things in life may be named with words. But as its deepest heart, life remains a wordless mystery. Our chalice will be extinguished with the words again by Irene Glass. Connected points of brightness. As we extinguish our chalice, may we remember the flame of life is in all things, the bright center of our planet, the star that lights our world, and the way those points of brightness connect within us and within all things. May we carry the light. May we share it freely. May we find it everywhere. Thank you.